There's no seat for you, you stinking old black rat! Get out!
His voice was loud enough to bring the entire bus to a halt.
Sir, please. I just need to sit down.
He leaned over the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. Are you deaf? Go back to your sewers. She gripped her cane tighter. Her hand trembled slightly.
My knees aren't what they used to be. Please.
He stood up.
Blackie always have an excuse, always.
He grabbed her coat sleeve and dragged her toward the door. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just looked at him, quietly, carefully, like someone who already knew exactly how this was going to end. What this driver didn't know was that the call she was about to make would end his entire life by Tuesday morning. 3 hours earlier, the rain hadn't started yet. Willis Sanders pulled her gray cardigan tighter and stepped out of the small yoga studio on Oakwood Avenue, her gym bag slung over one shoulder. 65 years old, silver hair pulled back into a low bun, and a body that still moved, slower now, but with purpose. The class had been an hour of slow stretches and deep breaths, the kind her doctor recommended after her hip replacement 2 years back. Her instructor, a kind young woman named Hannah, waved from the doorway. See you Thursday, Mrs. Sanders. Thursday it is, sweetheart. Tell that husband of yours I said hello. Willis adjusted her grip on the polished wooden cane. The cane wasn't a sign of weakness. She liked to call it her fashion accessory after the surgery. Walter would have laughed at that. Her husband, gone 12 years now, had always teased her about her little vanities. She thought about driving home. Her car was parked 2 blocks away. But her right hip ached from the floor work, and the thought of pressing a clutch through evening traffic made her tired just imagining it. A city bus rolled past the corner. Route 18, northbound. She smiled to herself. 40 years ago, she had founded that line. 3 second-hand buses, 1 federal grant she fought 2 senators to receive, and a dream of giving working-class neighborhoods the same access as downtown. Now there were 480 buses, 12 depots, and over 200,000 daily riders. And she was the chairwoman of the board. But tonight, she wasn't a chairwoman. She was just a tired woman who wanted to sit down. She walked the 4 blocks to the Magnolia and 5th stop, taking her time. The sky had darkened to the color of slate. The first cold drops began to fall halfway through her walk, and by the time she reached the bent street lamp, the rain had turned sideways. A flickering bulb above her hummed and crackled. Water pooled along the curb. She pulled her coat collar tighter and waited. She wasn't alone for long. Up the street, a young woman in a Trader Joe's apron came hurrying toward the stop, a grocery bag swinging at her side. Emily Taylor, 19, a journalism major at the city college, was finishing a double shift and just wanted to get home. She slid in under the street lamp without making eye contact, pulled out one earbud, then put it back. A podcast hummed quietly in her ear. 2 minutes later, an older black man crossed the street with a worn leather satchel tucked under one arm. Curtis Hayes, 58, a retired high school history teacher who still tutored kids for free at the community center 3 afternoons a week. Tonight, he had a paperback tucked under his elbow, The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, dog-eared and underlined from 100 rereads. He nodded once at Willis as he stopped near the curb. She nodded back. 2 strangers, 2 acknowledgments, the kind of small dignity older people show each other. The 3 of them stood there as the headlights of the 18 bus cut through the silver curtain of rain. The bus was warm inside, too warm. The radio was tuned too loud, country music crackling through a tinny dashboard speaker. A half-eaten sandwich sat next to the wheel, mayonnaise leaking onto a paper wrapper. An air freshener shaped like a wolf's head dangled from the rearview mirror, swinging slowly. The driver behind the wheel was a thick-shouldered man in his early 50s, white, with a graying buzz cut and a name patch sewn onto his shirt that read Holt. Derek Holt. 12 years on the job. A face that had perfected the art of looking annoyed at the entire world. He sighed loudly when he saw Willis approaching the curb. He sighed again when she fumbled her transit card against the reader. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He didn't say a word as the doors hissed open. What he saw, in that moment, was not a woman who had built this entire system from nothing. He didn't see the founder. He didn't see the chairwoman who would, by next Tuesday morning, be standing in his supervisor's office, signing the paperwork to end his career. He saw what he always saw when an old black woman climbed onto his bus. He saw a problem. And Derek Holt had a very specific way of dealing with problems. Willis took the first step up. The metal grip bar was cold and wet under her hand. "Today, lady, some of us got schedules." She didn't answer. She just kept moving, careful, slow, 1 foot at a time. Her cane found the rubber matting on the second step. "Christ almighty," Derek muttered. He tapped the wheel with 2 fingers. The country song still warbled from the dashboard speaker, oblivious. She finally reached the top step. The card reader beeped its soft, accepting tone. Willis paused there for half a second to catch her breath, water dripping from the hem of her coat onto the rubber floor mat. She looked at the row of priority seats, the ones with the blue stickers marked seniors and disabled. Empty, all 4 of them. She started toward the closest one, the one nearest the front, just 2 short steps away. "There's no seat for you, you stinking old black rat. Get out of the way." The words hit the bus like a brick through a window. Emily Taylor, halfway into her seat near the middle of the bus, froze with one earbud still in her hand. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Her grocery bag slipped from her lap and hit the floor with a soft thud. A green apple rolled slowly out of it, down the rubber aisle, and stopped against the leg of an empty seat. Curtis Hayes, who had just settled into a seat by the window, lifted his eyes from his Baldwin. His jaw set. His thumb stayed pressed to the page he had been reading, holding his place, as if some part of him refused to lose his place in the middle of what was happening. "Sir," Willis said quietly, "please, I just need to sit down." "Did I stutter?" Derek leaned over the steering wheel, jaw clenched. The fluorescent light caught the side of his face, hard and pale. "Are you deaf? I said move. Go back to your sewers." Her hand tightened on the cane. Her knuckles paled, just for a moment. She closed her eyes, opened them again. "My knees aren't what they used to be," she said. "Please." "It's none of my business." He stood up from the driver's seat, kicking the floor mat under his feet as he rose. "You people always have an excuse. Every single one of you. Always crying about something. Always wanting special treatment." He walked down the narrow aisle toward her. He was taller than her by almost a foot. His shadow fell across her face like a curtain closing. "I said move." "It's raining," she said. Her voice did not shake. "I have nowhere to wait." "Not my problem." The bus had gone completely silent. The country song still played, thin and oblivious, in the background. Something about a back road and a beer. A teenager in the back row, a boy, maybe 15, with a hoodie pulled half over his head and a phone in his lap, had lowered the phone from his eyes. He was watching now. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then, very slowly, he tilted the camera up. He hit record. Derek's hand shot out and grabbed Willis's coat sleeve. The fabric bunched in his fist. She did not scream. She did not pull away. She just looked at him. That same slow, careful look from before. The look of someone studying a man, as if for a future record. He pulled her toward the door. Her cane clattered to the floor with a hollow wooden sound that echoed in the silence. It rolled once, twice, and came to rest under the seat across from Emily. A man in the front row, heavy-set, white, 60s, wearing a worn Carhartt jacket and work boots flecked with dried paint, bent down and picked up the cane. He held it for a long moment. He looked at Willis. He looked at Derek. He looked at the floor. He said nothing. He put the cane on the seat next to him and turned his face toward the rain-streaked window. The window fogged where his breath touched it. Curtis Hayes set his book down on his lap, the page still marked by his thumb. He started to rise. Emily, watching him from across the aisle, opened her mouth and tried to form a word. Anything. Stop. Don't. Please. The word wouldn't come. Her throat had locked. She froze. Curtis was halfway up when Derek's voice cut through again, louder this time, aimed at the entire bus. Anyone got a problem with this? Anyone want to make this their business? Speak up now. His eyes scanned the bus from the front to the back, slow and deliberate, daring each passenger in turn. Emily looked down at her hands. The teenager in the back lowered his phone slightly, but kept recording from his lap, the lens still pointed up. The man with the cane studied his own boots. Curtis sat back down, slowly, his hands trembling in his lap. He hated himself for it. He would hate himself for it for the rest of the night. Derek dragged Willis the last 3 feet to the door. She stumbled once on the steps. Her shoulder hit the metal doorframe with a dull thud. He didn't slow down. He didn't apologize. He gave her one final shove, not hard enough to throw her, but hard enough to humiliate, and she stumbled out into the rain. She landed on her feet, just barely. Her cane was still inside the bus, sitting on the seat next to a stranger who would not meet her eyes. The man in the Carhartt jacket leaned forward. He held the cane out through the still open door, not getting up, not stepping down, just extending it toward her at arm's length, as if even being seen helping her was too much risk to bear. Willis took it. "Thank you," she said softly. The man didn't look at her. He pulled his arm back in like it had been burned. Derek hit the door switch. The doors hissed shut. Through the rain-streaked glass, Willis could see his face. He was smiling. He mouthed something at her, deliberately, making sure she could read it. Stupid old rat. Then he pulled the bus away from the curb. The taillights flared red, then disappeared into the gray sheet of rain. Willis stood there in the downpour for a long moment. The water ran down her cheeks. It might have been rain. It might have been something else. It was impossible to tell. She did not yell. She did not curse. She did not cry out. She straightened her coat. She steadied herself on the cane. She took one slow breath, in through her nose, out through her mouth, the way the yoga instructor had taught her an hour earlier, in a warm room that felt now like another lifetime. She reached into the inside pocket of her coat, the one with the small plastic sleeve she always kept her phone in, because rain was unpredictable and she had learned, over 65 years of life, to prepare for things, and she pulled out her phone. Her thumb moved with practiced calm. She did not dial 911. She did not call her daughter. She did not call a friend. She dialed a private number saved as Office, Direct. It rang once. "Mrs. Sanders?" A woman's voice answered, professional, alert. "Is everything okay?" "Caroline," Willis said. Her voice was steady. "I need you to pull every camera angle on Route 18, bus number 308. Internal, external, dash cam, tonight, the last 15 minutes. A pause on the other end. "Right now?" "Right now. And send a car to Magnolia and 5th. I'm walking back to the office." "Mrs. Sanders, are you sure you're—" "I'm fine, Caroline. I'm soaked, and I'm angry, and I'm fine. Pull the footage." She hung up. She slid the phone back into its plastic sleeve. She tucked the sleeve back into her coat. She took one more breath. Then she looked up, through the rain, through the dark, at the red taillights of the bus disappearing around the corner, 3 blocks ahead. She did not know yet what was about to happen inside that bus in the next 4 minutes. She did not know that a 58-year-old retired teacher was about to do the bravest thing he had done in 32 years of teaching. She did not know that a 19-year-old girl was about to learn, in the hardest way possible, the difference between knowing what is right and doing what is right. And she did not know, could not have known, that the man behind that wheel was about to say 4 words on camera that would end his entire career, his marriage, and his life as he knew it by Tuesday morning. She just stood there, in the rain, waiting for the car. Inside the bus, the doors had been closed for less than 30 seconds. Derek slid back into the driver's seat and exhaled hard through his nose. He turned the country song up another notch. He muttered something under his breath that sounded like a complaint about traffic, about the rain, about how nobody appreciated how hard his job was. In the middle of the bus, Curtis Hayes still had his thumb pressed to the page of his Baldwin. He was not reading. He was thinking. 32 years in a public high school classroom. 32 years of telling teenagers, black, white, brown, every kind of kid who walked through his door, that silence in the face of cruelty was the loudest sound in the world. He had told that to 1,000 students. He had told it to his own 3 grandchildren. He had told it to himself every morning in the mirror. He had just sat through the worst thing he had ever seen on a bus, and he had not stood up. His hands were still shaking in his lap. The bus rolled forward through a yellow light. The rain hit the windshield in sheets. He looked across the aisle. Emily Taylor was staring at her own knees. The green apple she had dropped was still rolling, very slowly, with the motion of the bus. Curtis closed the book. He set it on the seat beside him. He placed both hands on his knees. He took one breath in, the way he used to take a breath before walking into a difficult parent meeting. He stood up. "Driver." His voice was not loud. It was the voice of a man who had given 1,000 quiet, firm instructions in his life. The voice of a teacher. "Driver, what you just did to that woman was wrong. I'm going to report you. To the city, to the transit board, to the press if I have to." The bus went still. Derek's hands stopped on the wheel. The country song kept playing. He turned his head slowly, looking at Curtis in the rearview mirror. Then he laughed. A short, ugly laugh. "Sit down, old man." "I will not. I said sit down." "I am a citizen of this city," Curtis said. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. "I paid my fare. I have the right to file a complaint. And I have the right to stand in the aisle of a public bus and tell you that what I just witnessed was not just rude, it was cruel, and it was racist, and it will not stand." Derek's hand left the wheel. The bus was still moving. He did not pull over. He did not signal. He simply let go of the wheel, stood up out of the driver's seat, and started walking down the narrow aisle. The bus drifted slightly into the next lane. A car horn blared somewhere ahead. Derek didn't care. "You want to play hero?" he said. "You want to lecture me on my own bus?" "I am not lecturing you. I am telling you." Derek closed the last 2 feet between them and shoved. It was not a punch. It was not a beating. It was a single, hard, 2-handed shove against Curtis's chest. The kind of shove a man uses when he wants to humiliate, not injure. Curtis lost his balance. His legs hit the edge of the seat behind him. He fell backward onto the bench in an awkward, sideways collapse, his shoulder hitting the window glass, his legs splayed at an angle no 58-year-old back should ever be twisted into. The Baldwin paperback flew off the seat and skidded across the floor. His leather satchel slid off his shoulder and hit the rubber matting with a dull slap. The buckle popped open on impact. The contents spilled out across the aisle in a slow, awful unfolding. A graded stack of essays, about 30 pages, kids' names in the corners, red ink corrections in the margins, fanned out across the floor like a deck of cards. His reading glasses skittered out next. The left lens cracked clean down the middle when they hit the metal seat post. A small water bottle rolled under a seat. His wallet flopped open. 3 small photographs slipped out and fluttered down. 2 little girls and a little boy, his grandchildren, smiling at a birthday party with a chocolate cake. The photographs landed face up on the floor of the bus, right under Derek's boots. Curtis sat on the bench, breathing hard, one hand pressed to his shoulder. He was not bleeding. He was not unconscious. He was something worse than either of those things. He was humiliated. In front of a bus full of strangers. In front of a teenager with a camera. In front of 3 smiling photographs of his own grandchildren, scattered like trash at the feet of the man who had just put him there. Derek looked down at the floor. He saw the photographs. He saw the essays. He saw the cracked glasses. He did not move them. He did not pick them up. He looked up at the rest of the bus. Emily was frozen, both hands clamped over her mouth. The teenager in the back was still recording, his arm extended slightly, the lens of his phone clearly visible now. The man in the Carhartt jacket was staring at the floor. Derek planted his feet. He filled his chest with air. He turned his head slowly, scanning every face on the bus. and then he said the 4 words. "Shut your damn mouths." His voice was a roar. "All of you, filthy sewer rats, sitting in my bus, telling me how to drive. I don't care who you are or where you came from. You don't talk back to me. You don't lecture me. You don't even look at me wrong. Not one of you. Ever." The silence after he stopped was complete. Emily's hands were still on her mouth. A tear slid down her cheek and disappeared into her sleeve. Curtis Hayes, still half sprawled on the bench, did not break eye contact with Derek. He did not speak. He did not have to. Derek stormed back to the driver's seat. He slammed the partition glass between the cabin and the aisle so hard the whole bus shook. He sat down. He grabbed the wheel. And then he punished them. He stomped the gas pedal. The bus jolted forward. Curtis grabbed the seat in front of him. Emily's grocery bag tipped fully onto the floor. The teenager's phone almost flew out of his hand. Derek didn't look back. He aimed. He aimed for every pothole on Magnolia Avenue. There were a lot of them. The bus crashed through the first one and bucked hard, throwing every passenger upward off their seats. The Baldwin paperback slid 3 feet across the floor. One of the grandchildren's photographs flipped over. He aimed for the raised manhole cover at the next intersection. The bus hit it doing 40. The whole frame jolted with a metallic crash that rattled the windows in their seals. He swung the wheel hard around the curve at Magnolia and 12th. The tires squealed on the wet pavement. The bus leaned. The grocery bag slid into the aisle. The essays, Curtis's students' essays, with red ink in the margins, slid with it, scattering wider, some of them sticking to the wet floor where someone had tracked in rainwater. He cranked the radio louder. The country song was over. Now it was a commercial for a used car lot, shouting through the speakers at twice the appropriate volume. Inside the bus, no one spoke. Curtis slowly bent down. He picked up one of the photographs of his granddaughter, the youngest one, 6 years old, missing 2 front teeth, and pressed it to his chest. Emily Taylor, 19 years old, journalism student, was crying silently into her hands. Her shoulders shook. She had not made a sound. She was, in that moment, learning something about herself that she would carry for the rest of her life. The teenager in the back lowered his phone, finally, into his lap. The lens was still pointing up, the red recording dot still glowing. He had everything. 3 blocks behind them, a black sedan pulled up to a soaking wet woman standing under a flickering street lamp. The driver got out and opened the door. Willis Sanders climbed inside. Her hair was plastered to her forehead. Her coat was heavy with rain. She did not speak to the driver. She did not have to. He knew where to go. The sedan pulled into traffic. It rolled past the curb where she had just been thrown out into the rain. It rolled past the puddle where her cane had clattered. It rolled toward the headquarters of the Metro Transit Authority, a building she had funded, founded, and named, 3 miles north, where a security team was already pulling the footage from bus number 308 at her direction. And as the sedan pulled away into the rain, the narrator's voice came in over the windshield wipers, warm and conspiratorial, and just barely holding back fury. The sedan turned the corner. The headquarters was 3 minutes away. The sedan turned the corner. The headquarters was 3 minutes away. For the next 2 weeks, Derek Holt was the happiest he had been in years. He told his coworkers the next morning, leaning against the coffee machine with a grin spread across his face. Got rid of 2 of them in 1 day. Old lady and some retired teacher who thought he was Martin Luther King. They should put me up for Employee of the Month. Some drivers laughed. Some looked away. Nobody reported him. His union rep, Ronald Wilson, laughed it off over the phone on Wednesday. Trust me, kid, I've buried bigger things than this. By next month, nobody's going to remember her name. Derek cracked open a cold beer at the corner bar that Friday and watched the local news. A small ticker crawled across the bottom of the screen. Incident reported on City Bus Route 18. He snorted into his glass and grinned at the bartender. Crybabies. You touch 'em and they cry assault. The bartender did not laugh. The bartender did not even look at him. On Tuesday morning of the 2nd week, he was called into headquarters. He walked in wearing his uniform. He was chewing gum. He sat down in the conference room on the 18th floor without taking off his jacket, because he did not plan to be there long. His supervisor, Linda Anderson, sat across from him. She would not look at him. She stared down at a closed file on the table. "What's this about?" Derek leaned back in his chair. "I've been driving 12 years. Never had a problem." Linda did not answer. Derek cracked his gum loudly. He looked at the ceiling. He drummed his fingers on the armrest of the chair. The door behind him opened. It did not slam. It did not creak. It simply opened, slowly, with the unhurried pace of someone who already owned the building. A wooden cane stepped into the room first. Clack. Then a foot. Then another foot. Then a familiar gray coat, damp at the hem from the morning rain. Then her. Willis Sanders walked into the conference room with the cane in her right hand and a small leather folder in her left. Derek did not look up at first. He kept chewing his gum. "Whoever you are, can we just get this over with?" He glanced up. The gum stopped moving in his mouth. The fluorescent light caught the small badge clipped to the lapel of her coat. It glinted once. He squinted at it. Then he leaned forward, very slowly, as if his body wanted to read the words before his brain did. The badge said, "Willis Sanders, Chairwoman, Board of Directors, Metro Transit Authority." Derek's mouth opened. The gum fell out and hit the table with a small, wet sound. Nobody moved. Willis sat down across from him. She placed the cane across her lap. She placed the folder on the table between them. She opened it. "My name is Willis Sanders," she said. Her voice was calm, lower than it had been on the bus. "In 1986, I sold my house and used the money to start this transit system. 3 second-hand buses. 1 federal grant I had to fight 2 senators to receive. That was 40 years ago." Derek's hands had begun to tremble in his lap. He hid them under the table. "I have been the chairwoman of this board for 14 years. Every bus you have driven in your 12 years of employment has had my signature somewhere on its title of ownership." He swallowed hard. His Adam's apple jerked. "Last Tuesday evening," she continued, "I rode the 18 bus home after my yoga class. I had a sore hip. I wanted a seat. I was a passenger like any other rider in this city." She slid a small black tablet across the table. She tapped the screen. The audio began to play. "There's no seat for you, you stinking old black rat. Get out of the way." His own voice, tinny, unmistakable, recorded by the dashcam directly above his own head. The color drained from his face in real time. His knuckles whitened under the table. "Are you deaf? Go back to your sewers." Willis did not look down at the screen. She looked at him. "That woman in the rain, Mr. Holt, the one you dragged off my bus in front of a dozen passengers while not a single one of them stopped you, was me." He tried to speak. Nothing came out. He could only stare at the tablet. She tapped the screen again. The audio jumped forward. "Shut your damn mouths, all of you, filthy sewer rats, sitting in my bus, telling me how to drive." His own words, his own voice, filling the conference room. Derek's shoulders sagged. A single bead of sweat slid down from his temple along the line of his jaw. "His name," Willis said quietly, "is Curtis Hayes. Retired teacher. Wife named Margaret. 3 grandchildren. Their photographs are sitting on my desk right now because I had your bus searched yesterday morning, and we found them on the floor of the rear cabin. Under boot prints. Your boot prints, Mr. Holt." She closed the folder with a soft, deliberate sound. "You shoved a 58-year-old man onto a seat because he tried to defend an old woman in the rain. You called him, and me, and a bus full of innocent people, sewer rats. You did this on 3 cameras, with passengers recording on their phones, with my logo on the side of the vehicle you were driving." She placed both hands on the folder. Calm, steady, final. "Mr. Holt." He could not lift his eyes from the table. "You're done here." 2 uniformed security officers stepped into the conference room. Derek did not look up. He stared at the dark tablet screen on the table. His own voice was still echoing in his head. Linda Anderson slid a single piece of paper across the table. a termination notice. 2 signatures already on it, hers and Willis's. The third line waited. Mr. Holt, your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Your pension is forfeited, pending the criminal investigation. Detective Greg Moore of the City Police is waiting in the lobby. Derek's hand moved on its own. He signed. The pen made a small, scratching sound. It sounded very loud. He stood up. One of the officers reached for his elbow gently, the way you guide a child away from something hot. He did not resist. At the doorway, Derek paused. He did not look at her. I'm sorry. Willis's voice was very quiet. I'm sure you are, Mr. Holt. Now. He was gone. 40 minutes later, Derek was in the locker room of the North Depot, packing his things into a cardboard box. A coffee mug, work gloves, a half-empty pack of cigarettes, a photograph of his wife Karen taped to the inside of his locker. He peeled it off carefully and set it on top. The break room was full. None of the drivers were on shift. They had all heard. Nobody spoke to him. Nobody helped. Nobody met his eyes. 12 years gone in one morning. He carried the box out through the side exit, where 2 reporters were already waiting with cameras. One of them shouted his name. He turned his face away. A flash went off. The photograph would run on every front page by morning. Derek Holt, mid-flinch, clutching a cardboard box like a man holding the burned remains of his own life. Detective Greg Moore was waiting at the curb in an unmarked sedan. The arrest was quiet. No cuffs in front of cameras. Just a hand on the elbow, a door held open, the soft click of a seatbelt. Back at headquarters, Willis Sanders walked out alone to face the press. A dozen reporters waited under umbrellas. Karen Williams, a veteran from the local investigative channel, stood in front. Willis stepped up to the small podium. She did not bring notes. 2 weeks ago, one of our drivers refused service to me, an elderly black woman, in the rain. He then assaulted and racially insulted Mr. Curtis Hayes, a 58-year-old retired teacher who tried to defend me. On camera, this driver called his black passengers, and me, filthy sewer rats. Cameras flashed. We have terminated this driver. We have referred the case to the police. Starting today, I am ordering a full external audit of every passenger complaint we have buried for the past decade. She paused. Her hand tightened on the podium. 40 years ago, my husband Walter and I marched for the right to sit anywhere we wanted on a public bus. Tonight, an old man named Curtis sat in his living room with a cracked pair of reading glasses on his coffee table because he tried to defend that same right. I will not let his courage be the end of this story. She left the podium. By evening, the 6-second clip from the dash cam, "Filthy sewer rats," was everywhere. TikTok caught it first, 2.3 million views, then 4.8, then 12. The hashtag sewer rats trended at number 1 in the city by midnight, number 3 nationally by morning. News tickers ran the audio, podcasts dissected it, meme accounts froze his face mid-shout. In a small apartment on the east side of town, Derek Holt sat alone in the dark. The television was off. His phone glowed in his hand. He scrolled. He saw his own face. He scrolled. His own face again. A meme this time, his mouth open mid-shout, captioned with words he could not bear to read. He threw the phone against the wall. The screen cracked. In the next room, his wife Karen, whom he had not seen since morning, finished folding a shirt into a black suitcase and pulled the zipper closed. She did not say goodbye. The front door clicked shut behind her. And down the block, 3 soft knocks landed on the front door of a quiet brick house on Elm Street, where Curtis Hayes was about to receive his first visitor of the day. The front door of the brick house on Elm Street opened. Margaret Hayes blinked at the woman standing on her porch, an older black woman with a polished wooden cane, soaked through despite the umbrella she held to one side. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," Willis said. "My name is Willis Sanders. Your husband stood up for me on a bus 2 weeks ago. May I come in?" Margaret stepped aside without a word. Curtis was sitting on the couch, his reading glasses on the coffee table. The left lens was cracked down the middle. He stood up slowly when she walked in, one hand on his shoulder where the bruise had settled into dark blue. Mrs. Sanders. Mr. Hayes, please, sit. Margaret brought them coffee in mismatched mugs. A photograph of 3 grandchildren, the same 3 from the bus, hung on the wall above the couch. Willis looked at it for a long moment before she placed her business card on the coffee table beside the cracked glasses. Curtis picked the card up. He read it twice. He set it back down. "You own the bus," he said quietly. "I built the bus." Margaret reached over and put her hand on her husband's. Willis watched their hands together. A small breath caught in her throat. A single tear traced a slow line down her cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it away. 40 years, she said. I thought we had moved past the worst of it. I was wrong. You were not wrong, Curtis said. You were just early. She almost laughed. Will you press charges? He looked at Margaret. Margaret nodded once. I will. 6 weeks later, the criminal trial began in the courtroom of Judge Catherine Davis. Derek Holt sat at the defense table in a borrowed gray suit 2 sizes too big. His attorney sat beside him, expression unreadable. There was no jury. He had waived his right, a strategic mistake his lawyer would regret. Assistant District Attorney Patricia Brown prosecuted. She was sharp-featured and famously soft-spoken, until she was not. She called her first witness on the second day. The state calls Willis Sanders. Willis took the stand in a Navy suit. She did not embellish. She described the rain, the cane, the rough fabric of his hand on her coat sleeve, the laugh he gave through the rain-streaked glass as he pulled away. She did not raise her voice once. When Patricia Brown asked her final question, Mrs. Sanders, in your 40 years of building this city's transit system, have you ever encountered anything like this? Willis paused, looking out the window. Yes, but I had hoped not to see it again before I died. The courtroom went silent. Curtis Hayes took the stand next. He walked to the chair on his own 2 feet, glancing at Margaret twice on the way up. He placed his hand on the Bible. He sat. He adjusted the microphone with care. I am a teacher. For 32 years, I told my students that silence in the face of cruelty is the loudest sound in the world. On the night in question, I sat in my seat for 30 seconds while a woman was dragged off a bus in the rain. Those 30 seconds, I will carry them for the rest of my life. He turned his head and looked directly at Derek. Derek looked at the floor. But I did stand up, and the man on trial today put me onto a seat for it. He scattered the photographs of my grandchildren across the floor of a public bus. He cracked my reading glasses. He called me, and the woman I tried to defend, a name that should not be spoken in this country, in this century, on a vehicle paid for by public money. Judge Davis sat very still. Her pen had stopped moving. Emily Taylor took the stand on the 3rd day. She was 19. She was shaking before she sat down. Patricia Brown spoke to her gently. I froze, Emily said. Her voice broke twice. When Mrs. Sanders was being dragged out, I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. When the driver called those words, I froze again. I am 19 years old. I thought I was brave. That day on the bus, I learned that I wasn't. She wiped her eyes with the cuff of her sweater. But I'm here now. Willis turned in her seat in the gallery. She caught Emily's eye and mouthed, very softly across the room, You're saying it now, dear. Emily nodded. She did not stop nodding for nearly half a minute. The 4th witness was the teenager from the back row. He was 15. He brought his phone in a clear evidence bag and handed the entire video, unedited, to the prosecution. When the dashcam footage and the phone footage were played for the court, the shove, the spilled satchel, the scattered photographs of 3 smiling grandchildren, and the 4 words shouted at the bus, Judge Davis closed her eyes for several seconds. When she opened them again, she did not blink for the rest of the proceeding. Derek took the stand against his lawyer's advice. He tried slip of the tongue. He tried bad day. He tried taken out of context. He tried, I'm not a racist man. Patricia Brown waited patiently until he finished. Mr. Holt, you said filthy sewer rats on a public bus to a busload of mostly black passengers after physically assaulting 2 of them on 3 cameras with your own employer's logo on the side of the vehicle. Would you like to revise your testimony, or would you like to keep digging? Derek did not speak. The verdict came down on the 5th day. Guilty on every count. Judge Catherine Davis took a long breath before she read the sentence. Mr. Holt, in 31 years on this bench, I have heard many cases, but the words you spoke on that bus, and the violence with which you spoke them, represent something this court will not tolerate. You did not just assault Mr. Hayes. You did not just humiliate Mrs. Sanders. You attacked the very idea that every person who boards a public bus has equal worth as a human being. The court sentences you to 2 years in state prison, 18 months of supervised release, $85,000 in restitution to Mr. Hayes, $50,000 to Mrs. Sanders, 200 hours of mandatory civil rights education during your incarceration, the forfeiture of your entire pension, and a permanent prohibition against any future employment in public transportation in this state. Derek's shoulders sagged for the last time. Willis did not smile. She stood. She walked out of the courtroom alone, leaning on her cane, the rain just starting again outside. 6 months later, spring had come back to the city. The Metro Transit Authority had a new policy on the wall of every depot, framed in simple black wood. It was called the Hayes Standard. Every driver in the system was now required to complete 40 hours of mandatory civil rights and elder care training, signed off by an independent panel of community members. Every passenger complaint had to be reviewed within 30 days by a board that did not answer to the union. Every bus carried a small red button near the rear doors, mounted at eye level, labeled in 3 languages. Speak up. A passenger could press it without saying a word. The complaint would be filed anonymously and reviewed by the panel within 48 hours. 3 other cities in 3 other states adopted their own versions of the policy within the year. Curtis Hayes was invited to sit on the new oversight committee. He accepted on one condition, that he be paid the same as any other member, no honorary discount. At the first meeting, he placed his battered copy of The Fire Next Time on the table in front of him. My job, he said simply, is to listen, and to remind the rest of us why we are here. That was the longest speech he made all year. Emily Taylor walked into the registrar's office at her college a week after the verdict. She unticked the box marked journalism on her degree audit. She ticked the box marked social work instead. The advisor at the desk did not ask why. I want to be the person who speaks up before someone gets hurt, Emily said quietly, more to herself than to the advisor. Not after. She signed the form. She walked out into the spring sunlight. The teenager from the back row of the bus, his name was never released because he was still a minor, received a small civilian award from the mayor's office in a private ceremony. His mother cried. He did not. He just shook the mayor's hand, took the certificate, and went home and put it in a drawer. On a warm Tuesday in April, Willis Sanders boarded a city bus at the corner of Magnolia and 5th. She wore the same gray coat. She carried the same wooden cane. She wore no badge. She brought no security detail. She had just finished her Tuesday yoga class. Her hip was sore. She wanted to sit down. The new driver, a young black woman in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a neat braid, saw her at the curb through the windshield. She pulled the bus over with care. She knelt the front step down to the curb without being asked. She leaned over the rail. Take your time, ma'am. The bus will wait. Willis smiled. A small, private smile. She climbed the steps slowly. She tapped her card. She walked to the priority seat near the front and lowered herself onto the cushion. She placed her cane across her knees. She reached into her purse and took out a small photograph. Walter Sanders, smiling at the camera, holding a sign at a march in 1985. She placed the photograph on her lap. She looked at it for a long moment. We did good today, my love. We did good. The bus pulled away from the curb. It rolled smoothly through the wet streets of a city she had spent 40 years trying to make a little kinder, one route at a time. Inside the cabin, every passenger sat where they wanted, in seats they had paid for, on a system that finally, for the first time in a long time, felt like it belonged to all of them.
The camera pulled back. Through the rear window of the bus, the city skyline rose in the soft afternoon light. Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, smash that like button so more people can see how silence becomes complicity. And if you believe that everybody, and I mean everybody, deserves a seat, subscribe and stay with me, because the next story I'm telling you, you won't believe it either. Justice doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it comes wearing a gray coat and carrying a cane.